Hey, if you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new to my space, my name is Heavy Shaw. I'm a mindfulness teacher and a body worker, and I support humans to break free from the construct of today's society to create their unconditioned lives so they can turn setbacks into strength, experience greater vitality, creativity, and trust in their bodies. I use so many different modalities in my work. Some of them are functional strength training, postural alignment, and the magics of mindfulness. In today's video, I want to talk to you about habit, not the kind of conversation that you create trackers and track your habits and set goals and this and that. So if that works for you, great. So you might want to watch this video. There might be some insight in it, but if you've got a good routine established, so this might not be the best video for you. But if you're one of those people that you feel overwhelmed by the pressure of creating habits and failing and constantly saying, oh, I'm going to start doing all these things from next week, but that next week never comes. And even if it comes, you feel so bored, you feel so tired, you feel so exhausted by the burden of habits. I'm going to start it off by we live in a society that wants us to become high functioning robots. And oftentimes habits also turn into ways in which that we need to become a slave to certain routines that we label as good. After being in the health and wellness industry for almost a decade now, what I realized is even the healthiest habit, if they're done robotically, they mean nothing. We see a lot of people, they get obsessed about habits that they lose their livelihoods, they lose their social life, they lose so many other aspects of health and well-being because they're so committed to these routines. Personally, I remember I used to be so much into training that now looking back, it was actually a form of addiction, but it was labeled as good addiction. I wouldn't process my feelings. I would actually go to the gym to numb myself out or to distract myself rather than actually sitting with the emotions that meant to be processed. Yes, there is a healthy way of exercising or moving your body to really process the emotions, but also there are so many people doing it so robotically in a very addictive way that the meaning and the intention behind it doesn't exist anymore. That intention that actually optimizes your overall spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional health. This whole conversation is inspired by a great conversation that I had with a client of mine. And this wasn't the first time I had these conversations with clients that they come to me, they're like, I'm struggling to build habits, especially the newer clients. I find that to be the case. And they have this list of shoulds and shouldn't. Like, I should be waking up at this time of the day, doing this thing, doing this thing, doing this thing. And you ask them why. They say, because I should be doing it. It's good for me. But being good for you is not enough for people to stick to it, right? So what I want you to do, the first thing you're going to do is grab a piece of paper and write down all the things you should be doing. So I should be exercising, I should be eating, I should be more balanced, I should be this, I should be that. Just write down all of that. One list of shoulds, list 10 things that you're shooting yourself on, and then write another list of 10 things that you think you shouldn't be doing. And look at that. Feel that. When you constantly should yourself, the sound or the voice is not intrinsic. It's actually coming from the outside world that tells you you should be doing that, you should be doing that, you should be doing that. And oftentimes we feel like a slave to these shoulds and shouldn't. And if you have a creative mind or you have a little bit of a rebellious personality, you're like, no, I don't want to do that. A part of you constantly fights with that because no one want to do anything that is like a should rather than a desire, a want, a need, right? So when you've done the list writing, maybe pause this video now, write down your list, 10 things on the should list, 10 things on the shouldn't list. And then look at it, read every single one of them out loud, and then now tear it apart. They mean nothing. They mean nothing if they're not coming from your inner world that you actually want to create that reality for you. What they do is they just become a bunch of clutter that actually stand between you and the version of you that you're becoming or unbecoming, creating the unconditioned life that is yours. The other thing that is insanely important, and I feel like a lot of people are missing, is understanding what makes you tick. Looking at the habits, the routine, the dynamics that you already have got going on. Look at them. What are they inspired by? What made you stick to them? Or you can also study the periods of your life that you stuck to a really good routine or you actually enjoyed yourself doing certain things. You had that deeper sense of satisfaction that I'm actually like having fun doing this and it's something that is good for me and I feel great about it. So looking at those things and studying yourself, like instead of in studying other people's shoulds and shouldn'ts and discoveries, give yourself permission to be the creator of your life, the discoverer of your own self. And looking at yourself, like what makes you succeed in anything that you've done before. You might, if you have a critical mind, you might say, oh, I never succeeded in anything. But if you actually look closely, there are moments, there are periods, there are times in your life that you've done something that you're actually proud of, that you felt great doing it. So take note. I want you to close your eyes, take yourself back to that moment. Feel like what did you feel in your body? What was the motivation and what got you going? What made you tick? What wanted you what made you to get out of bed and do what you wanted to do? Whatever that was. And take note of what did I feel? What was my deeper why? What motivated me? What got me going? So I've heard this from so many different clients. It's like, oh, I've done it because there was something important was happening and it really mattered to me to be feeling a certain way or to be that kind of person that I wanted to do. So now that is a really good example of you thinking, okay, so if I wanted to replicate that into my life, how could that look like? Or in the case of one of my clients who was telling me how he gets excited when he has a challenge. He's learning this skill set and he actually put in the work to learn that skill and to get into that score. Not all of us might be as competitive as him, but that worked for him. That really is a great way to actually study yourself. I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm not much of a day-to-day kind of habit person. I'm more of a project-based kind of person. Maybe I define a project for myself that I get to learn, that I get to show up with, or I'm developing a skill that I care about and I do that, right? So in the case of exercise, for example, yes, there are so many great exercises and there are so many different tips. I can speak on different modalities that I learned about for hours, but if you don't do it, what it doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is like finding what brings you joy, what makes you motivated to actually show up to that. So maybe I could tell you like, oh, strength training is so great for you, you should be doing it, but you just don't, it just doesn't make you tick. But you actually really enjoy playing soccer and then you want to go play soccer. So you can start training for that. And then even when you do strength training, you're doing strength training for the sake of getting better at your soccer. It's no longer strength training for the sake of strength training that is it's you should be doing it. It's great for you. You have an intentionality behind it. You're doing it for something that you care about. So my question is, what does it make you tick? What is it that you want to learn? What is it in your life that gets you going? Or it got you going in the past, and try to replicate that, study that, and see if you can make that happen in your life. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into what makes you tick, you can also think about how you can study your own patterns. So oftentimes when I ask these questions, people say, "Oh, I don't have any positive patterns right now. All my patterns are negative." I'm like, "Okay, great. So let's study the negative pattern, how the negative pattern actually starts and how is it happening." In the case of someone enjoying gaming, right? So there is something about gaming that gets them going. So there's that element of dopamine hit, going to different levels. Like even before that, how they can actually get to their couch or wherever they do the gaming. So then they run the game. Like, what is that whole pattern? How does it happen? So then when you actually study your pattern, you'd be like, okay, if I actually like enjoy a lot of gaming, so how can I gamify my own way of doing things? In my example, I really enjoy watching YouTube videos, and I could see my pattern around watching YouTube videos, and also like a part of me almost craved what they were doing, and I almost lived through them of the kind of life that I want to create for myself. But because it felt like so far fetched, I just never wanted to do it. But then when I actually study my pattern around watching YouTubes and start to create my own videos on a week to week basis, it doesn't mean that I no longer watch YouTube. Like the amount of time I watch YouTube has changed, or even the reason I'm watching YouTube or how I'm studying YouTube has changed. So I want you to also think about how those patterns, or like those negative patterns, could potentially be a direction or a redirection for your life and how you're doing things. In studying the pattern, if you are a woman biologically and you have a cycle, that also could be your pattern. Witnessing how your dynamic changes in each phases of your cycle and trying to lean into it rather than feeling that you need to fight with it. For me, the last week of my cycle, when I get my period, and then the week of my period, oftentimes I am in a completely different headspace. I want to go inward. I want to be more introverted. I want to ponder and think. And when I force myself to go out, almost a part of me fights with it. And I spend a lot of energy figuring it out. But when I'm actually leaning into the part of me that want to go inward, I often have a lot more wisdom and insight for my life when I come out of it, or I have a lot more energy. So in terms of training, I might actually focus more on my mobility exercises, stretching. Like I prioritize movement, but the movement that actually feels good in my body, rather than feeling I need to be able to hit certain amount of weight every phase of my cycle. So you can think about your patterns in so many different ways. But if we are trying to be robots or turn into slaves into our habits, we actually miss a massive opportunity to understand ourselves and our dynamics. If you're building habits for 2025, I encourage you to put that curiosity lens on. The world needs that. The world doesn't need a bunch of people who are doing things robotically with no meaning, with no sensations. Rather, we actually need more humans. So let your habits, the patterns, the things that you create in your life allow you to remain human. The other thing that is insanely important to understand is this idea of self parenting and supporting yourself and nurturing yourself in becoming the person that you desire to become. So, if we think about ourselves as individuals with inner child within ourselves, and then we also have that element of higher self, you can name it however that resonates with you. Oftentimes, the way I see it is we have this higher self, you can call it the king, the queen, the higher self, the spirit, the great spirit, that is moving through you. And then we are the self, and then we have this inner child within us. The inner child has so much wisdom into the essence of who we're meant to be in the world. But oftentimes that's wounded, it's not nurtured enough, it's not being supported for those gifts to come out. So it's your job to be able to be compassionate enough towards yourself, self parent yourself enough to be able to feel nourished, to be able to feel nurtured. And sometimes this could look like being kind to yourself, slowing down, listening in, maybe allowing the right of emotion to move through you. And sometimes it could look like discipline. And sometimes, no matter how loving you are as a parent, sometimes you just need to set that boundary, hold the hand of your child and take it to XYZ that you know it's the most supportive for them in that moment. Maybe when a child is going nuts and like being angry, you can't really calm them down, but you know if they actually sleep, they're going to feel a lot better. So oftentimes in these cases, even though the kid might not want it, but the parent would do anything possible to get that kid to have a few hours of sleep because they know it's going to help them, it's going to support them. So sometimes you need to be able to take that role for that inner child of yours. So that the being discerning enough to know which one you need. Is it that softness, that gentleness, that letting go, or is it that element of disciplining, holding yourself accountable for the life that you're creating? And both are needed, and it's a dance between the two. And in a world that constantly wants us to pick one truth over the other, obviously it's really hard to navigate that. So even as someone that I've been in this field and I've seen it so many times in other people and myself, I constantly need that reminder. It's like, okay, there's a dance. Which one can I choose now in this phase of my life? The other thing that is insanely important when it comes to establishing new habits is not associating your success in habit building to how worthy you are. You're already worthy. Whether you have the best habits or the worst habits right now, you're worthy. It's only the stories that and the narratives that is running in your own mind that defines how worthy you feel. You are of worth. You've been created to live this lifetime. And so many people came before you to make this moment in time possible. So there's no doubt about your worthiness. So how your habits are going, whether you're failing or you're succeeding, it means nothing about your worth. And yes, when we have a good routine going and we are nourishing ourselves and we are nurturing ourselves in a way that is supportive to us, we are thriving, we feel great, we are glowing, we feel strong in our body. But please don't tie your habits and your consistency to your worth. Asking yourself, how can I build a habit? How can I build a routine knowing that I am worthy beyond measure? So being rooted in the seed of your own enoughness rather than this idea of you need to be fixing yourself. There's this question that I always ask that I learned from Tara Brach. What if there's nothing wrong with you? Who would you be if there was nothing wrong with you? And design a life from that place, knowing that your gift is so needed in this world, and all you need is to create a pathway to nurture yourself, to support yourself to be that. Your habits are a guide, they're not rigid, torturous device or self-worth measuring tools. Your habits gotta be created around your life, not the other way around. I see so many people stop living, stop enjoying their life, stop allowing the creative forces move through them because they need to be sticking to a routine. And they need to be doing everything on a checkbox basis. I talked in some of my other videos about one day I was reading this book and I was very present. I was enjoying every sentence I was reading and I was sipping on my tea. And I had this voice in the back of my head, just finish up faster so you can go meditate. I don't remember, like maybe go for a walk. I was like, this is so ironic how the whole point of this for me to be present and enjoying myself, and I'm making it about doing the things and again turning into high functioning robots doing more in minimum amount of time. There is benefit in efficiency, but there's also, if we're prioritizing efficiency over everything, we are actually losing joy and presence in our life. As you're wrapping up 2024 and planning for the new year, you take time to prioritize your joy, your flow, your fun, and most importantly, have the courage to begin again. So often we get so afraid of failing that we don't try again. And put that lens of curiosity on and witness yourself as this powerful, beautiful, worthy being that is waiting for you to discover it, to understand it, to nourish it, to support it. So may this coming year be the year that you prioritize your well-being and your health and all the beautiful habits that you're building in a way that makes you feel more whole rather than divided. May your routine brings you more joy, pleasure, and enjoyment of yourself than feeling that you're constantly fighting yourself. May your routine this coming year makes you more human, because being human, remaining human is an act of bravery in a world that wants to turn us into a high functioning robot. And thank you for joining me along for this conversation. And if you're looking for a guide to up level your routine, check out the 5 lifestyle basics down below that I'm talking about, the basics of nutrition, movement, sleep, nervous system regulation, and so much more.